Today I have a full care guide for the Philodendron Brasil houseplant. I'm going to cover everything you need to know about this plant, including light, water, humidity and pests, so that you can have a thriving houseplant in your home, and we're starting right now. Philodendron Brasils are a variegated version of the philodendron green vining plants with distinctive green and yellow stripes on the leaves. So as with most variegated plants, this means that they need bright indirect light to thrive. This is because there is less chlorophyll in the yellow part of the leaves than the green part of the leaves, which the plant needs to photosynthesize. If the plant is not getting enough light, then it will start to revert back to its original version, the green philodendron, and you will lose the yellow striping. This is essentially the plant going into survival mode, so keep the plant in a spot that gets lots of natural light. Philodendrons naturally live on the forest floor of tropical rainforests where they get dappled sun throughout the day. So this means that in our homes, they will not do very well if they are getting lots of direct sun, because they're not naturally used to this. It's important, therefore, to keep them in a position that gets indirect sunlight. Otherwise, you will start to see some fading in the leaves, and the leaves may start to shrivel and turn yellow. An ideal spot for a Philodendron Brasil would be near a east or west facing window where you'll get lots of bright indirect light in the morning or in the afternoon, but I wouldn't keep it on a south facing windowsill. They can tolerate a bit of shade, but they will do best near a bright window. I wouldn't put them in a north-facing position because the leaves will start to lose their vibrancy, and the new leaves will probably start to come out all green instead of green and yellow as it starts to revert back to its original form. Allow this plant to dry out in between watering. Philodendrons don't like to be in soggy soil all the time, so make sure that you're not keeping the soil consistently wet. I water mine about once a week in the summer when the plant is actively growing, and probably once every 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in the winter when growth has dramatically slowed down. So I've got my trusty moisture meter that I always talk about in my videos, and that tells me exactly how dry or moist the soil is. Only when it reads dry on the meter do I water this plant. So I have an Amazon link to this in the description if you want to buy it. Make sure you don't go too far in between watering because philodendrons do need moisture in the soil. If you consistently underwater this plant where the soil is absolutely bone dry often, then you will start to stress the plant out and the leaves will start to droop and turn yellow, perhaps with browning on the edges of the leaves. This shouldn't be too much of an issue so long as you up the watering schedule immediately, and the plant should perk right up. If you give this plant too much water, then the roots will begin to rot and your plant will start to turn brown and the leaves will feel soft and limp. Don't mistake this for underwatering and give your plant more water. The symptoms for underwatering and overwatering our houseplants are very similar, which is not that helpful for beginner plant enthusiasts. It's always a good idea just to check the soil of the plant for moisture before watering, either by sticking your finger into the soil or by using a moisture meter. If the soil feels wet, then leave it a few days and then check again. If you have been overwatering your plant, then the best thing to do is to repot it into some fresh compost and perlite mix, cut down on the watering, and it should bounce back. So I found philodendrons to not be that fussy about temperature. They'll do fine in the normal temperature range of your house, both during the summer and winter. I probably wouldn't keep them on a south-facing window in the summer where it gets lots of direct sun, as this will dry the plant out and it'll really start to suffer. Philodendrons are also fine in general house humidity in your home and they don't require any special treatments. My plant is doing fine in the winter with the central heating on, and I don't take any extra steps to increase the humidity, such as having a humidifier next to them. If you're finding this video useful so far, then please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps the video reach more people, so thank you very much. I found this plant to be not particularly fussy about the soil it lives in, so I have mine in a mix of everyday compost with some perlite added for good drainage. You don't really want any of your houseplants sitting in just compost because over time this will get too dense for the plant's roots and the growth of the plant will be stunted. So add something to your soil to make it lighter, such as perlite. My soil was approximately 80% compost and 20% perlite, and that seems to work well for the majority of my houseplants. So this mix allows good soil drainage so that the plant is not sitting consistently in wet soil, which is bad for the roots of the plant. It will develop rot. Make sure that you use a balanced fertilizer for your Philodendron Brasil. So I use Miracle Grow water-soluble fertilizer and apply that about once a month during the growing season, the spring and the summer. But do feel free to use any other fertilizer that is suitable for houseplants. All houseplants need fertilizer to be able to grow properly, and Philodendron Brasils are no different. If you're not fertilizing your plant, then it will not be getting enough macro and micronutrients, and it will start to look a little bit faded with a loss of sheen and colour on the leaves. Growth will also not be as strong as well. I don't fertilise my plants during the winter because the plant isn't actively growing, so it does not need fertiliser, and you risk giving the plant too much nutrients that it cannot use, which will probably lead to yellowing leaves on the plant. It's a really good idea to check the roots of this plant at least every year, or maybe even twice a year, to check whether it needs potting up into a bigger size. Philodendrons are quite fast growing plants and their roots tend to grow quickly, so you will find that your plant outgrows its pot quicker than your other houseplants. If the roots of the plant are circling around the pot, then you should size up your pot and lightly untangle some of the roots and use fresh potting soil. If you allow your plant to get root bound in its pot, then this will seriously inhibit its growth and it won't get any bigger. You'll also start to notice that you'll need to keep watering the plant more often because the roots have taken over the soil in the pot and there's basically no soil left in there to hang on to moisture to then give it to the plant. I have done a couple of videos repotting my houseplants, such as my Philodendron Birkin, my Syngonium and my Calathea eldergrass. So do have a look at that series after this, guys. You will notice that the plant develops aerial roots along its stems as it gets bigger. It uses these in the wild to latch onto other plants or trees so that it can continue to grow taller in its surroundings. So therefore, you can use these as a reference point for propagating this plant. You just want to take a cutting underneath these points and pot it up into a propagating medium of your choice. So I tend to propagate all of my plants in a propagation box filled with perlite, and I've got lots of videos on this if you wanted to have a look after this. I have successfully propagated the Philodendron Brasil before, and I'll do so again in the future videos, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to be notified when this comes out. Taking cuttings from the plant is a way of pruning the plant, and it will respond by sending out new shoots and becoming a much bushier plant. People tend to think that cutting the stem stops the stem from growing any further, but this really isn't true. In fact, this is a great way of making the plant extra bushy. Fortunately, I've not noticed any pest problems on my Philodendron Brasil, but philodendrons can be susceptible to spider mites, so we just need to make sure that we are regularly checking the underside of our leaves and along the stems for very fine webbing. If you do find very fine webbing underneath the leaves and on the stems, then it's best to take your plant outside, remove all the soil and give the plant a rigorous spray with a relatively powerful hose. You want to spray away as much of the spider mites and make sure there are none remaining, otherwise the population will just bounce back on the plant. I would then repot the plant and keep it away from your other house plants until you are sure that there are no more spider mites on the plant. Your plant may also have fungus gnats in the soil, which can be a real nuisance for your indoor plants. If you're not sure what these are or how to get rid of them, then check out my how to get rid of fungus gnats video The link is in the description. If you find it hard to get the watering right for your houseplants, then click on this video here and I'll show you 6 common watering mistakes that you may be making with your houseplant and how you can stop making them. I'll see you there and thank you very much for watching.